There was a local fisherman. Local fisherman and his crew, they were minding their own business. They're out in the middle of the sea, and they pull in this unconscious person. He's just floating in the sea. And they bring him on board, and they notice he's got some bullet holes in him. He's just out there, and he's bleeding away, and they pull out the bullet holes, and they try to patch him up. And then they notice there's a bigger problem. This person doesn't know who he is. He's got amnesia. He's got a big problem. He doesn't know who he is, and people are going to try to kill him. And he doesn't know why. And this is a movie. I just described you the start of a movie. And it works great for a movie, and you say, oh, that's great. What's the next part? But that's sometimes our story. Our story is the church of today sometimes just has trouble understanding who it is. It's got like a spiritual amnesia going on. It just doesn't know who it is. It's just like, what's my role here? And we have an enemy that is trying to kill us spiritually. That's more than a movie. Even more, we have let the world around us describe and define who we are. Oh, we don't know who we are, really. I kind of get an idea. What does it mean to be the church? But we let the culture define who we are. Oh, those people that go to church, they're just irrelevant. They're kind of like mind-numbed robots. They don't think for their own. They haven't thought for their own since middle school. And they do these good things. They think they're good people. But in reality, they're just naive. They're emotional. They're not really good for anything that really needs to be done. We kind of let the world define who we are as the church, There's a guy named David Dawkins. He's a renowned atheist. And I just pulled this article this morning. He wrote, he was interviewed for an article in the Irish Times. He's from the UK, so obviously they know more than us. But in 2002, it says that the Oxford professor Richard Dawkins has described the Catholic Church as one of the forces for evil in the world. Yeah, that just should be enough right there. But here we go. He was talking about the child sexual abuse scandals that were big about almost 20 years ago. They were not so harmful to the children as the grievous mental harm in bringing up a child Catholic in the first place. He's comparing the sexual abuse scandals. Oh, that's not as bad as bringing up somebody in the church. He goes on and says that the Catholic Church has, over the centuries, developed brilliant techniques in brainwashing children. I'm delighted every time a leading Catholic seminary for training young priests closes down so it can't get any more recruits. I'll finish this one. When I read in the newspaper, I left with smiling that this seminary closed. However, if the Catholic Church does die in Ireland, and I devoutly hope it will, I hope that it will not be replaced by some other idiotic superstition or some other kind of religion. We've let our culture define who we are. There's lots of people that want to. Jesus was talking about the church. He says, I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it. Now, when I was younger, the version said, and the gates of hell cannot overcome it. We talk about the church as the church universal. It's the church, God's people. And in the Apostles' Creed, it says, I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic, or the universal church, all of us. But do we know that? Do we know that? I mean, deep down, what we're supposed to do because of that? It's almost like this COVID era, we all have our masks on, and we're not even sure, all right, who is that? What, are you part of the church? Can you take that mask down so I can see your face? Oh, now I know who you are. You're part of God's church. You know, our time together, the rest of our time, I want to talk about the church. What it's for, what's the mission in this world? How does a person become part of it? What are we supposed to do because we are part of the church, not because we attend a church, that we are the church. So let me read out of 1 Peter chapter 2, because Peter says, this is the church. Let me tell you, the church. 1 Peter chapter 2 says this. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His wonderful light. Once you were not a people. Once you were not a people. But now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. Let me say this one more time so that we got it. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God. That's the church. And I want to talk about each of those so that we get a little picture so that when we leave here, we don't have to say, oh, I don't know who I am. You know who you are. You know what you're supposed to do. So here we go. I'm going to talk about our true identity. All right? You ready on this one? Some are saying, oh, what? I don't know what you're talking about. This is going to be kind of interactive. It's kind of scaring most of you. It's all right. I want to talk about our true identity. I want you to see yourself as someone who is priceless. Priceless. A chosen people. God says you are a chosen people. I want you to just look at the person next to you and say, I am priceless. You can say it. It's okay. You can say it and you're looking at it like, do we say that here? Just look at the person and say it. Sometimes we need to say it a little bit so it gets incorporated that I am priceless. I have been chosen by God. You know, maybe we should do that more often. Just look at people and say, I'm priceless. I'm priceless. Next month, it's going to be 30 years. It's going to be 30 years since I professed my faith in the church I grew up in. 30 years. And for some of you guys saying, man, that's a long time ago. But it seems like it's been only yesterday that I did that. In my church, it was more of it's not a real faith until you profess it in front of everybody. And everybody knows. And you have to sit in front of the elders and you're shaking. And then, you get through that. And then you can profess it in front of church. But the more I thought about it, even then, God was working on me before then. I said it's going to be 30 years that I said it publicly, but God had chosen me as one of His children way before that. Way before that. You know, I had parents that said, we're going to church. It's not an option. We're just going. That's what we're going to do as a family. Hey, the church is open. Hey, we're going. And that God laid that foundation for me, that's what was going to happen. I had Sunday school teachers that would do, I remember my kindergarten, I was in kindergarten, and my Sunday school teacher was one of my distant aunts, and she was going to teach about the Exodus, from people leaving Egypt. And she said, we're going to talk about manna today, and she brought this little cereal, and I thought it was going to be Sugar Smacks because that always tasted really good, but it was something without the sugar, and it was like, that was terrible. And we said, well, what is this stuff? Exactly, that's what manna means. It says, what is this? And even back then, God was working to say, I'm going to lead you to an encounter with Jesus. I had a middle school teacher, Miss Beimers. I think I've talked about her before. Wonderful lady who said, let me tell you about Jesus. And her eyes would get this big when she would talk about it. And she would talk about her times as a missionary. And she would talk about Jesus. You know, I had all this groundwork that God was leading me to an encounter with Jesus. He had chosen me before I was even born and said, I'm leading you to know Jesus. And that's my story. God told me I am precious way back then, and I didn't even know I was precious. That's our story. That we don't even know that we're precious, that we've been chosen by God. That God said, you are my child. Do we think of that? When we're in the dumps all day thinking, oh, I am a turd, I did this or that, or I didn't even do anything, I just feel terrible. And we forget that God chose you. He chose you. Of all these people, He said, I love you. I love you. I'm bringing you to know Jesus. I'm making you part of my family. My family. So don't forget that. You are priceless. You've been chosen by God. But even in the next one, a part of this, you are royalty. You are a royal priesthood. So you look at the person next to you and in your best British accent say, Your Majesty. You know, if you need to get up and bow to the person next to you, do that. Do that, Your Majesty. You are royalty. Some of us had trouble with that, right? You just looking at the person, no, they're not royalty. No, we don't do that. In the Old Testament, there was all these divisions. You know, people they're part of this tribe, or they're just a worker, or maybe you had priests, and all even different levels of people. And the priests were people that would offer sacrifices. They would lead people to worship. They would say, all right, you have obviously broken God's law here. Let's make up for that. Let me make this sacrifice so that you're right with Him. And lead people into worship. They were singers even, all of this. And this is what the priests did. And Jesus said, I'm going to build my church. My church. So that everyone is a priest. Everyone is a priest. When you walked through the doors this morning, you didn't need someone to lead you into worship because you are a priest already. You can walk into God's throne room and sit and talk with Him anyways. It wasn't just the priests that can do this now. It's everyone. You can sit and just be right here and say, God, I need you right now. Or you can say, God, thank you so much. I am chosen by you. I am priceless. We can just talk with our God. Because we are a part of a royal priesthood. Jesus is the great high priest now. And He's made us priests that we can go before God and talk all the time. When we have communion, we remember that. We remember that we can talk with God anytime we want. Is that just blow your mind on that one? I don't know why we don't do it. But it allows us to do this. What if the next time that we had communion, we took communion and then just sat in groups of 3 and 5 and just talked about our stories? You know, this is how Jesus this is what He's done in my life. He's just made it that it's worth living now. My life is. You know, what if we just did it? Some people would just say, oh, that's too much. We can't do this. But we all have that story in our lives on how Jesus has changed us and made us a royal priesthood. People that can go to Him whenever. And He says, oh, welcome. Let's talk. Because we are royalty. How's your memory getting? Are you remembering who you are? Are you grabbing a hold of this? You are a chosen people. You are a royal priesthood. You are a holy nation. A holy nation. Look at your neighbor again, and this time don't like stick a finger in their face, but say, you've got a job to do. Nobody's saying that. It's okay. Look at them and maybe like whisper, you've got a job to do. You're not here just to take up space. You have a job to do. You know, this is maybe the toughest part of being a child of God sometimes. We think that it's about us. Maybe we have to shrink a little bit so people don't notice that we actually are part of God's family. No, I don't want people to notice this. But we have a job to do in our world to say, I'm a child of God. Are you? Jesus was saying this about his people. He says, I've got other sheep who are not a part of this sheepfold. I've got to bring them into my sheepfold. There's other people. How am I going to do this? I need to get other people to bring them in. That's part of our job. And the crazy part is we think that it's only those people that are talking. Well, let me tell you about Jesus. You know, and it's not all that. How many of us that have a personal relationship with Jesus had other people show us what a relationship with Jesus is like before we actually said, I'm in? And we've always seen it in other people first. That person modeled. You know, sometimes it's grandma. Grandmas are just, next to their name, you should just write love, right? Because they just exude this love for other people. And we say, oh, that is an amazing way to interact with people. I'm just going to be loving. And sometimes it's tougher love. But that's how we do it. But you saw love. You saw how people pray for other people. You know, that's our God says, you know, you can show people first. Don't say that I can't tell them the good news, that I can't tell them about Jesus, but show them, please. That's your job. That's your basic job, to show God's love for His people. You know, I think that we lose that in there. I've got some. I always go back to my roughing buddies because there's a bunch of them that they don't know Jesus, but they want the same things I do. They want good families. They want good communities. They want safe neighborhoods. All these things, they want the same things. Not just some of them, they just don't know that Jesus is the answer for this world. And then we get the next things as well. You know, we'll start out in talking about Jesus and how He is the answer for the ills of this community in our country. It's a spiritual battle. It's the heart of us that is corrupt first. And we can change all the laws that we want until we change the hearts. It's not going to make a difference. It's just changing the landscape. You know, we need to tell people about Jesus. And with our actions first. And then also with our words. You know, and it doesn't matter who they are, whether it's like my friends that's how they are, or yours. It's the same. We have a job to do. Showing and telling the good news of Jesus. Bill Hybels said this: the local church is the hope for the world. Can you imagine that? That celebration, the local church is the hope for Muskegon. Can you, does that like, the responsibility? Or is it like, yes, we are the hope. This is our job. We are part of God's family and we have a job to do. I'm belaboring that one, but hopefully you understand your job. Because you are a chosen people. You are you are a royal priesthood, you are a holy nation, you are a people belonging to God. You, look to your neighbor one last time. You're probably bugging them by now, they're just like going like this. Tell them, you belong to God. You belong to God. You know, of all the things that we're going to grab a hold of this morning, hopefully that we grab a hold of this idea that you are not just for yourself. It's not all about you. It's about you belonging to God, and you have a purpose here. You know, you keep looking at the person. Do they look just like you, this person next to you? Do they look like you? And in some ways you're going, whew, I'm glad they don't, right? And that's okay. That's okay. We are all different. We belong to God, but we are all different. We all have different personalities, thank goodness. We all have different talents. We like to do different things, but we still belong to God. The thing that I grab a hold of so often, and Celebration embraces this, is that there are no purebred Christians. There's no purebreds here. We are all mutts. Nobody's like disagreeing with me. Usually it's like, oh, I'm not a mutt. You're all mutts. You all are a mixture of people that came from different ways in their life and have different paths to knowing Jesus. And Jesus says, you're mine. You belong to God now. And that's what we are. We've all got this weirdness going on. Jesus, I'll reread John chapter 10, verse 16. Now, I'll use it this way. Hopefully it's not too irreverent. I have other dogs who are not part of my doghouse. I need to bring them home. We are all mutts, mixed breeds. And God uses us with our questionable and checkered pedigrees to be His church. We are His people. We belong to God. Now, long ago, we were dogs running on the streets, smelling all the smells of death, going down the dead-end streets and the dangerous highways of life. And we were caught, put in the pound, captured. And then Jesus came and says, I want to adopt that one. I want to adopt that one and that one and that one. And I'm going to make them part of my family. I'm going to write on their certificate, new owner. They are God's now. You are priceless. You are royalty. You have purpose in this life, and you belong to God. This is who we are as a church. Let me close up, because hopefully you have your memory back already. I love light bulb moments. Light bulb moments as in, I got it now. Got it. Let me tell you about my light bulb moment, how I said, that's the church. Now I get it. I went camping with a friend of mine out to Hershey, Pennsylvania. Some people love to camp. It's just not, I'd said this before, it's not totally my thing, but it was for Creation Fest. Creation Fest, a huge music festival, the biggest one in the States at the time. And then what happens is like 10,000 people descend into this area, and they all want to camp in a little spot like this big. And everybody's on top of each other, and that was the start of Creation Fest. So we're there for this big Woodstock-type festival that on Friday night, there's 30,000 people watching this concert. 30,000 people. It's huge. And on Friday night, they say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have communion for 30,000 people. And at the time, I said, what? We can't do that. Where are the elders? The elders have to distribute the gifts, and they have to walk with these silver plates full of bread and the juice, and they have to make these reflections so it bounces off the ceiling. And that's how it's supposed to be. We can't do communion in the middle of a huge field with 30,000 people. And then there was the light bulb moment. It was like, these are people that are part of my family. They're part of God's church that says, I belong to God. I am priceless. I am royalty. I have a purpose. And they were part of my family now. 30,000 people. And they distributed bread and juice amongst people. I think it was just a little juice box. It was insane in that way. But it was a wonderful time. I'm sitting next to some Assemblies of God people that were raising their hands, and I'm not even sure what they were saying. And then there was some, truth on this one, there were some nuns in the circle as well, dressed up as nuns. It was wonderful. These were all people, part of the church, celebrating together their story, remembering how Jesus paid the price for them so that they could be part of the church, God's big family. Do we see the church that way? That you are part of God's people, His church? Is that your memory? Is that your memory now? Do you know who you are? That you are the church. For you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people belonging to God, to declare the praises of Him who called you out of darkness into His glorious light. This is the church. This is who we are. Let me pray for us as the church, brothers and sisters. Pray with me. God, we are so thankful for our family. Our family that we get together here at Celebration, but throughout the world, our brothers and sisters that sometimes don't even speak the same language. They don't have the same culture. They're obviously different than us. But you have called them and chosen them as your family, and they are part of ours as well. We are all religious mutts who have been chosen by you and adopted in your family, and we are so thankful for that. God, we ask you to guide, that you might guard, that you might protect us this week as your family. We ask your blessing on us as we go out to live as your big family. We thank you, God. Amen.